Hey there, YouTube! Merry Dogmas. It's getting to be the end of the year, so I thought I would give you my top 5 best books that I read this year and my bottom 5 worst books that I read this year. Let's start with the worst books. Most of these books I think I've talked about in wrap-up videos, but this is just like a list of just like the worst things that I read this year. Just didn't like any of these books at all. So the first one is Dream a Little Dream by Kristen Gear. This book just like didn't do anything for me. It felt like it was full of tropes and just like the interesting parts of the storyline didn't happen at all. It's the start of a trilogy and I really don't have any interest in continuing with it. I don't care about any of the characters, and I just felt like they were all trying way too hard in a bad way. So yes, this was a big no for me. The rest were audiobooks that I listened to. The second worst book that I read this year was The Amber Spyglass by Pullman. This might be a little bit controversial because I know this series is well loved, but I just felt like this book was really insulting to religious people. The entire message of the book, and it seems like the entire message of the series, is that if you believe in any sort of god or you follow any sort of religion, then you are dumb. You can't be intelligent at all. Because people are allowed to be religious, and they can be religious and they can be smart. It just felt really insulting to people who are religious, and it left a really bad taste in my mouth. Number 3 is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and lots of people also love this book and I can't stand it. I felt like all of the 80s references were just so heavy-handed. I didn't like the main character at all. I didn't feel anything for him. He just felt like kind of this internet scum that I don't like. It was just like everything about the internet that I hate. Number 4 is the Paper Magician series. I don't remember who wrote this, but I listened to this all on audiobook this year and I just finished it for some reason. I thought it might get better, but it just never did. The magic system in the series was really interesting, but just the main character was so annoying, and there was this sort of like student-teacher romantic relationship. It just had like power balance issues that I'm really not a fan of. I just wanted it to get better because the magic system is so interesting. All about using like elements and manipulating things like paper and rubber and metal and fire and things like that. It just fell really flat for me. And finally, probably the worst book I read this year is The Last Days of Magic. And I can't remember who wrote this book either. I also listened to this on audiobook and I hated this book so much. It felt really boring, really slow. There were so many time jumps and so many characters with different names, and I couldn't keep anybody straight. So the main story was set in the past, and it was bookended by these things that happened in the present, and at the end of the book I found myself wanting to just have that story about the present and not whatever this weird history thing was. I feel like the author wrote the wrong story. So those are the worst books that I read this year. I don't recommend any of them at all. And now it's time to go on to the best books that I read this year. So the first book that I really liked is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. And I wouldn't say this book is like super like groundbreaking good, but it just surprised me a lot. It's basically about this princess who runs away from an arranged marriage and she meets 2 men. One of them is the prince that she was supposed to marry, and the other was the assassin that is supposed to kill her. Pretty much the whole book you don't know which guy is which, and it just had me wanting to read it so much and get to the end and figure out who was who, and it was just really interesting and it kept my attention, and I was just so surprised by how much I liked it that it ended up in my best books of the year. Number 2 is You're Never Weird on the Internet Almost by Felicia Day. This is her memoir. I listened to this on audiobook, so it's narrated by Felicia Day herself, and it was just so inspiring. I found myself crying while driving to work listening to this audiobook. I wasn't as much into like nerds, the kind of nerd stuff that she was when she was growing up, but I was kind of like nerd adjacent growing up. So a lot of the feelings that she felt growing up, or the feelings that she has as an adult trying to be like a creative person, I also feel or have felt. I just related to it a lot, and it was just really inspiring to me, and it just made me want to go out and do everything and achieve all of my dreams. Number 3 is the Young Elites series. I love this series so much. I found it super interesting. It's kind of like Italian Renaissance inspired X-Men. It's really cool, and it's a villain story, which threw me for a loop because I didn't realize that until maybe about the second book. It was just like really interesting, and I'd wanted to read it for a long time, but I never got around to it, and I finally did, and I was like, why did I wait so long? And I got to meet Marie Lou this year and get her to sign all of my books. There we go. And she was really cool, and I just really appreciated this series a lot. It was a fun ride. And next is the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, this whole series, and I picked up to show you Cress, which is the 3rd book, and it's my favorite. I just love this series so much. I've talked about it so many times on this channel. Fairy tale retellings and sci-fi is just so good. It's just so good. Just if you need anything to read ever, just read the Lunar Chronicles. And finally, probably my favorite book that I read this year is Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. What a surprise! Christy loves a Rainbow Rowell book. Rainbow Rowell's like my favorite author at the moment. I just love everything that she does. Attachments was really nice. The end of it was a little weird, but there was a lot of stuff in there that kind of inspired me about kind of finding out who you are and kind of getting out of a depressed rut. Like, I even have sticky notes with quotes that I really liked in this book. And I have one sitting above my computer that I look at every once in a while to inspire me. So yeah, of course, Rainbow Rowell, best book of the year. So those are my best and worst reads of the year. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what the best book and the worst book that you read this year was, so I can either read it or avoid it. Alright, that's all I've got for you guys today. I'm Christy Lou. Till next time, matane!